What's up, everybody? My name is Jacob Hardison, and today let's talk about rear pivot block tuning. So last week we of course discussed our front pivot block tuning, which is going to be our A and B block. And this week we're going to go ahead and discuss our rear pivot block tuning, which is going to be our C and D block. Before we jump too far into that though, I do want to remind everybody we are still doing our raffle giveaway on this TLR 2250 DC Elite. So make sure you stay till the end to get some more information on that guy. So swinging back now to our video today, we are going to discuss, of course, the C and D block, which is going to continue with our roll center tuning. So we're going to talk about pin height, the pin width, and then also the angle, and on the rear that is going to be considered anti-squat. So just like last week, I'm going to use that piece of paper to kind of start things off so you have a really good visual representation of where the pin is sitting and how it actually is going to look when it is on the car itself. And then we will finish off with doing our width stuff, which I can't do nearly as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about our tuning adjustments. So now we've got us swapped around here. The first thing I want to go over is going to be, of course, the key we have here in front of us. So you can see we've got tower and ground. That's going to indicate whether the pin is going higher in the pill, which is close to the tower, or lower in the pill, which is closer to the ground. Then, of course, we have our C block, which is going to be our front of the rear arm, and our D block, which is going to be the back of the rear arm. The other thing I want to talk about first is going to be complementary changes as you adjust your pin. The most important two of those is going to be rechecking your droop to make sure that is correct, and then also rechecking your camber, because as you go more narrow or wider, you are going to affect how much positive or negative camber you have at the wheel. To go along with the camber, another adjustment you can make is going to be adjusting the camber links in unison. That one is a little bit more of a loose complement. I don't usually change my link location, but if you want to keep the same geometry of your links, then you will have to adjust that as you adjust these locations. So to start out here, the first thing we're going to go ahead and talk about is going to be our height. Then we'll talk about anti-squat, because I can take care of that here on this piece of paper. And then we will end off with our width of the rear end. So to jump into our height end of things, of course, as you can see, we're already in the low position, close to the ground. So we're going to start off talking about that. Then we'll go into the higher position end of things. Now, this lower position is going to make the car feel more stable under braking because it's going to have more side-to-side traction. The reason for that is it is going to allow the rear end to roll a little bit more. But the counterpart is that coming out of the turn under acceleration, you might notice that it's going to feel a little bit looser, comparatively speaking. To go to the opposite end of the spectrum though, as we go to this higher rear pin position, closer to the tower, you're going to notice that there's going to be more on-power grip, and you're going to have more grip coming specifically out of the turn because it is on power. Traditionally, you're off power going in, you're on power coming out. But what you might also notice is that you're going to feel like the rear end is going to be more swishy-swashy, especially under braking. You're going to be taking away side grip. Now, because you're in the higher position, you get that more on-power feel. As you go into the acceleration end of things, the on-power grip can kind of counter that side-to-side traction loss a little bit. So it can still feel like the rear end is going to square up. But you will see a lot of times, especially on this more US-style track, that will kind of run more of like a middle or a low. So let's call this middle and this low compared to rather the full high. Pins trying to roll away there. But that is going to be the characteristics of both. So as we go to our lower position, you're gonna get more side-to-side grip. And as you go to the higher position, you're going to get more of that acceleration grip. Now, just like anything, there are extremes one way or the other. So again, that's why I said a lot of times you'll see kind of more of a middle position or a low position here on the US style tracks. Now to transition into our next piece here, which is going to be our anti-squat. So anti-squat, if you don't know, is going to be the angle of this rear pin. So right now in this video, you can see it's kind of in a flatter spot, and then to just get really, really extreme, that would be, as my pin rolls away, a very extreme anti-squat. So you're gonna have a higher C and a lower D block. So to talk about our anti-squat, because we're already in the ultra super duper max position, anti-squat is going to, just like it says, it's going to anti-squat the rear. You're gonna have less squat. So you'll notice on power, the rear end isn't going to move nearly as much. You're not going to have as much of the weight transfer. So it's going to feel more grippy on power. It's going to feel like it wants to kind of shoot out of the turn. But going into the turn, you're going to have a quicker rotation. So off power, more rotation, on power, more grip. The other thing this is going to do, because it's stiffening the rear, is that as you come off of a jump, it is going to give a little bit more of a pop feel. So you could also notice that maybe you even gain a little bit of extra height off of the jump, but that's going to be a super duper minor aspect to the anti-squat in the grand scheme of things. And it's not going to be as good on bumpy tracks because the rear end is stiffer in this situation. It's not going to want to soak up the bumps nearly as well. The other thing is that the rear of the arm is going to sit kind of on the lower end of things. So it's going to want to feel a little bit more grabby, comparatively speaking. So this is definitely something that if you want to go to the extreme, you're going to do more on a smoother track or a higher grip track. Countering that now, going to a flatter arm. Sorry, that was a really odd transition, but going to a flatter arm here. So taking anti-squat out, you're going to be more level from your C to your D block, not have nearly as much angle in the rear arm. On this end, you're going to notice that you're going to have less grip on power and you're going to have less rotation off power. So that meaning you're going to have more grip in the off power end, less grip in the on power end. And this is going to be better on a bumpy track because now we don't have anti-squat. We have, I don't want to say pro squat. Pro squat is more of like that where the front is lower, but you have a flatter arm, a more squatty arm per se. This is going to be better on a bumpy track because the rear end isn't going to be as stiff. It's going to be able to soak things up a little bit more. So you can still see this on a smooth track, but definitely on a bumpy track, you're going to want to have the arm on the flatter end of things. So to give a quick recap, with the arm like this, where the front and the rear are going to be more similar to one another, that is going to be better on a bumpy track. You're going to have more grip going into the turn, but you're going to have less grip coming out of the turn. And just like everything else, as we go and add more anti-squat, it's pretty much going to be the polar opposites of that. You're going to have more grip on power. You're going to have quicker rotation off power. So less grip off power, more grip on power. And it's going to be something you're going to see a lot more on the smoother tracks compared to the bumpy tracks because the rear end is going to be stiffer. So with that being said, that is going to conclude our height and anti-squat end of things. So the next thing we're going to do is I'll swap to the rear end of the car. Like I said last week, it's not the best visual representation, but it's better than nothing. And we will go ahead and talk about our width. So now that we are looking at the rear end of my buggy, there's going to be a couple options for our pivot width. That of course being more narrow. So having this pin closer to the screw, or wider, so this pin going further away from the screw, closer to this shock. Now, as you can see, at least you should be able to see, my little dot is right there. So I am currently in a more narrow position. So we'll go ahead and talk about that first, and then we'll talk about our wider pivots. Now, the more narrow pivot is going to increase your weight transfer. So if this was the front of your car, this was the back of the car, you're gonna have more weight go to the back. And then you're also going to notice that the car is going to roll a little bit more. So with that being said, because you are moving that weight around more, the increased weight movement can add grip to the rear, specifically on a lower grip situation. So it's going to add rear grip. But I do want to put a caveat in there. If you are on a higher grip track and you're too narrow of a pivot and you're transferring too much weight, it can overload the tires, which is then going to make it feel like you have less grip. So it's going to be important to make sure you're not going too far one way or the other, depending on what type of surface you're on. But generally on a looser, lower grip surface, the more narrow pivot is going to increase your rear grip and make the rear end feel a little bit more stable because it's rolling more. Now the counter to that, of course, is going to be taking this pin and going wider. So that is going to have less weight transfer front to back, and it's going to have less weight transfer side to side. So because it's not generating as much grip, you definitely aren't going to want to do that nearly as much on the lower grip surface. That is going to be more reserved for a higher grip surface. because you already have all of the rear grip. You're just looking to then stabilize the rear end. You're looking for it to roll less. That way you don't traction roll on a high grip surface. So to give a quick recap on that, the narrow pivot is going to be better on a lower grip surface. It's going to give you more traction because it's going to roll more. The wider pivot is going to be better on a higher grip track. It's not going to roll as much, and it's going to help prevent traction rolling. Now, of course, we have talked about quite a few things today, and I want to do just another recap of the complementary changes you can do, especially now that we're actually looking at the rear end of the buggy. The first thing is going to be not as important in my opinion, but just something that I do want to give the heads up on, which is going to be that as you move this pivot point up and down, you are going to be either increasing or decreasing the distance from this link to your arm. So theoretically, you would want to move this link up or down depending on what you do here. The other thing is that as you adjust your width, you're also going to adjust this point here. So you would potentially want to move it in or out. Like I just said, it's not something I worry about nearly as much. A lot of times we'll just leave those links in the same spot. But if you want the same theoretical geometry, you can make those changes as well. The two most important things that you are definitely going to want to check though is going to be your droop first. So, and the reason for that is that as you go up and down here or in and out, the screw location in the arm itself is going to change in relation to the ear of the chassis where it sits. So you're going to, depending on what movement you do, increase or decrease your droop. So you're going to want to make sure you recheck that. That way your droop stays consistent. And then the other thing is, especially as you change your pivot in or out, because this point is going to get pushed out, you're going to need to either increase or decrease the actual length of here, not the pivot points, but just the length of it. Those are going to be the two important things, is definitely droop and then making sure that your camber is still at -2, -1, whatever you personally want your camber to be set to. The other thing I do want to quickly go over is going to be that, of course, in this video, something you can do with these blocks here in the back is going to be adjusting your rear toe. I do already have a separate video on that detailing what those adjustments do. And the reason for that is I very specifically today just wanted to go over the kind of roll center end of things. So if you want to tune with toe, definitely check that video out. I'll do my best to put a link down in the description. That way you guys can go straight to that video. Now we finished up with the tuning options, the adjustments, what they do, and the complementary stuff that you are going to potentially want to do. We'll swing you back around and we'll go over that 22 5.0 DC raffle. So for the first time ever in our YouTube channel history, we are going to do our first ever giveaway. This time being the Team Losi Racing 22 5.0 DC. Now it's going to be very easy to get in on this. And all you're gonna have to do is down in the description below, we're gonna have a link to our website, which is going to take you to a page to buy tickets. It's gonna be $5 a ticket. And once we sell 50 tickets, we'll go ahead, I'll make another video of all the names inside of a spin wheel of some sort, some name generator, and then we'll find out who, of course, is going to take home this buggy. So there's no requirements of you have to subscribe, you have to like, you have to comment. It is as simple as going to the website. You can buy as many tickets as you want for $5. And then once we sell at least 50 of them, we're gonna go ahead, we'll pull a name and we'll let everybody know who wins. There's no limit on buying tickets. If you wanna buy 25 tickets, you're more than welcome to buy 25 tickets. It is however many you wanna buy, but it is $5. And like I said, as soon as we get 50 tickets sold, then we will go ahead and do the live drawing for this vehicle. So good luck to you. And of course, thank you for joining us today for our tuning video, and we'll see you guys next week.